Welcome back, contract followers and Zhongli orders. The Geo Archon is coming back for his third rerun, and today I'll talk to you about his best builds, themes, weapons, and playstyles in order for you to be ready for his return. Starting off right away with his abilities and talents. For the first talent, the normal attack, you don't need to level this up if you aren't using him as a main physical damage carry, so don't worry about this. Yeah, you're never using this. Dominus Lapidus is his elemental skill and his staple ability. There are two modes to this actually. The press gives you the Steely, which periodically does AoE geo damage and also resonates with other geo constructs. The particle generation is RNG and it has a chance to generate one geo particle every time it resonates. The hold gives the Jade Shield, so you probably aren't using the press variation ever, because you get the pillar and the Jade Shield. The Jade Shield gives your team a universal 20% elemental resistance shred, and yes, this includes geo, animo, and physical damage. This is the talent that you should build Zhongli around if you're using him as a shield support, and in general, because it's like if you're pulling for Zhongli, you want the shield. Planet Befall brings a falling meteor down to Earth, dealing AoE geo damage and petrifies all of the enemies within its AoE. Petrification is a unique CC to Zhongli, and it's sort of like freeze where enemies can't move for a certain duration depending on the talent level, 4 seconds being max at talent level 10, which I have right here. Also, if you take a look at the damage scaling, this is the highest damage multiplier we have in the game so far for an elemental burst, even beating out like Raiden level 13, so it's pretty good, and this is the multiplier that makes burst DPS Zhongli viable. Resonant Waves is our first passive talent, which makes Zhongli shield broken. Each time the shield takes damage, it increases its own shield strength by 5%, and this stacks up to 5 times. This increased shield strength lasts for the entire duration of the Jade Shield, and this is why Zhongli's shield is unparalleled by any other shield support there is, like Diona, Toma, and even Xinyan and Noel. Dominance of Earth is your 4th Ascension talent, and this talent just gives you bonus damage on all of your abilities, based off of your max HP, and this includes normal and charge attacks. So even if you're building a physical DPS Zhongli, HP Sand still is viable because of this talent. And Arcanum of Crystal is his passive talent for crafting, and he gives you rocks. He gives you rock. He gives you rock. Anyways, as one of the most versatile units in terms of artifacts, Zhongli has a lot of options. The artifacts you will want to use on him also depend on how you plan to use it. Starting off with what I like to call a buffer support, Zhongli has two options that both fill this role best, and it is the Tenacity of the Millelith 4-piece, which gives you a 20% attack buff, a universal attack buff, and a 30% shield strength increase if you can play around the Steely. So keep in mind that your elemental skill does have to keep hitting opponents for this 20% attack buff and 30% shield strength increase to be active. So if you do not want to play around that mechanic, the 4-piece Noblesse is always a good option if you do not already have a Noblesse user on the team, since it can give you the same attack buff after you use your elemental burst, and this is a little bit more consistent in my opinion, especially if the enemy can destroy your stone pillar. For general burst support artifacts, the Millelith, Petra, and Noblesse artifacts are all good options for the 2-piece set bonuses, and the damage you'll get from choosing any of these options and pairing them with each other is really close, so I wouldn't stress over it too much. Just choose your best artifacts from these sets. Other notable 2-piece options would be the Emblem of Sever Fate's 2-piece set, which gives energy recharge if you somehow still need it, considering his burst does cost 40 energy, and the 18% attack artifact sets, Gladiators and Shiminawas. Although these aren't the best 2-piece set bonuses, you probably have decent pieces from this set, so the Gladiators, the Emblem, and the Shiminawa, and having a set bonus is still better than running no set at all. For the Glad and Shiminawa artifacts, I know he's more focused on HP, but even if he is focused on HP, the attack will still benefit him by giving him a little bit more damage, and it'll still increase your burst damage. For other 4-piece artifact sets and reasons to why I don't recommend them, the 4-piece Archaic Petra has a really good 2-piece, but the 4-piece is really hard to use. I think it's just really hard to use, and it sounds really good on paper, but it's difficult to use in practical situations. I don't think you want to run around with Zhongli to pick up the crystallized shields, because that would decrease your DPS a little bit if you still have to worry about that fact. Even if I say that the 4-piece Emblem is probably the best support artifact set in the game, next to Viridescent maybe or Noblesse, the 4-piece isn't the best for Zhongli because again his burst cost is really low, so building him for energy recharge is a bit of a waste, because you're not gonna get the maximum bonus you can get from the 4-piece bonus. As for artifact stats, like the sets, your build might vary depending on how you're using him. First of all, if you don't have really good artifacts on your main characters, I would recommend that you build him as a shield support with triple HP main stats. Invest in your other DPS units and your sub DPSs before investing into this unit for damage. There aren't really that many domains that are efficient to farm for him, like the Millelith. If you're doing that domain, you're only farming it for Zhongli, and maybe Eula if you have it. And I think farming artifacts for your other characters is still better than investing into him first. However, if you want to build him as a sub DPS, you want an HP % Sands, a Geo Damage Goblet, and a crit rate or crit damage circlet, depending on what you need more. An attack Sands will give you similar damage and sometimes even more than an HP Sands, but then again, you're kind of sacrificing his shield ability, which you kind of want to have anyway. I would suggest having an HP over an attack percent 1 if you have it, because again, I don't want to sacrifice his shielding potential for a little bit more damage. Another option for hybrid build is that you can give him HP Geo HP to have a more jack of all trades type of build, but I wouldn't recommend it unless you have insane substats, because having no crit rate or crit damage is a bit of a hit to your stats, and I wouldn't recommend this, and instead just go with the triple HP if you wanted to run an HP circlet anyway. As for the weapons, for the burst support or sub DPS builds, the Homo will always be the best option because of its insane crit damage substat, and because Zhongli can utilize the HP to attack conversion from its passive really well. The only con to this weapon is that he will never be below 50% HP if you're playing him correctly, but the stats do make up for that fact. The Jade Spear will actually give you the same damage as Homo with perfect substats or with the same artifact sets, but only at max stats, which you probably will not get unless you're using him as a main DPS, because it requires a lot of field time to get all of those Jade Spear stacks up. The Deathmatch and the Blacklift Pole are basically the equivalent of those 5-star weapons because of their stats. They're basically like I'd call the Deathmatch like a baby version or a 4-star version of the Jade Spear, and the Blacklift Pole as like a 4-star version of the Homo minus the HP passive. And these weapons are actually really good and beat out some of the 5-star options. I would suggest, however, if you have both of these weapons, to use the Deathmatch instead, because the Blacklift's passive is really hard to proc on Zhongli, again because he requires field time to get those kills, and he only gets kills with his burst. So you want the attack buff for his burst, but in order to get the passive of the Blacklift, you have to get kills. If you only get kills with your burst, then what's the point, right? Because then by the time you have your burst again, the Blacklift passive will be out. So yeah, I'd suggest using the Deathmatch because it'll give you more consistent damage. As for his utility or buffer role, and with an HP focused build, I would strongly recommend Favonius Lance because of the particle generation from its passive if you have enough crit rate to reliably proc it. The Black Tassel is also a very good option and a weapon that we all have and has the highest shield potential out of all the available polearms. The only problem is the passive isn't really used, but the HP substat is pretty worth it. And if you are using Zhongli as a main DPS, I think 2 weapons belong in the Copium tier, and that is the Vortex Vanquisher, which is the weapon that he comes with, sadly, and the Skyward Spine. These weapons are really hard to use because they both kinda require field time. The Vortex Vanquisher requiring you to, like the Jade Spear, have to be on field to get the stacks up, and it doesn't even have the crit rate stat like the Jade Spear to back it up. And the Skyward Spine, which is a very decent weapon and gives good energy recharge, but the passive is a little too selfish because you need to be on field after your burst. These weapons are Copium tier for even the Fizz build, because if you're trying to go Fizz build, then just use the Crescent Pike, everyone has it, and it's better than all of these weapons. Moving on to Constellations, C1 is a quality of life. It really helps with the Millilith buff because it gives you 2 Steelies. You can independently proc the Millilith buff from either one of them, and this constellation is usually not going for unless you're going for further constellations like C2. And C2 is really good because the main point of this constellation is that it gives you 100% shield uptime as long as the shield doesn't break. Whenever Planet Befall is used, this is your burst, you will get a free refresh of your Jade Shield. This also works in co-op, and so if you use your burst, your entire team gets a copy of your shield. C3 is an increase to your levels, which, you know, everyone has the C3 and C5 the same. C4 is an AoE increase in his burst, and actually, before making this video, I didn't know it increased petrification, which is actually kinda huge. So at talent level 10, petrification goes from 4 to 6 seconds, which is actually kinda huge and gives you a lot of breathing room in a fight. C6, this constellation makes Zhongli even more universal at it, as it effectively makes healers useless, because he becomes a healer himself. Whenever the shield takes damage, 40% of that incoming damage is converted to HP for the current character. So basically, 40% of all damage your shield takes is given to you as healing. So yeah, if you want C6 Zhongli, he will give you another reason to not run healers aside from when there's corrosion. For team comps, Zhongli fits in literally any team, especially one that requires 2 units or less. So what I mean by this is, he does not have a best team because he can be used in literally any team. So for example of the 3 units or less thing I was talking about is Eula Raiden, where Raiden already provides Superconduct and the battery for Eula. So all they really need is survivability, which can be provided by a healer or by a shielder, so Zhongli. He fits really well in this comp because all you have to do is press or hold E and switch back to Eula or Raiden, and Eula will be protected while she is on field. Another team comp that makes sense is I don't have her, but a Hu Tao Sing Cho comp, and this team really is just a 2-man or 2-person combo, and he can fit really well in that team because that team really doesn't need more than just the 2 of them. So a common team for that would be a Zhongli Albedo duo with a Hu Tao Xingqiu, and you're good because Albedo gives you the EM, Zhongli gives you the shield, Hu Tao heals herself, and Xingqiu provides a little bit of healing. He's a character that you really don't pick for the damage that he can contribute or the damage that he can give your main DPS. And in my opinion, that fact only changes when he's on Geo teams with Noelle or Ito as the main carry, or for example on a Zhao team, which is how I use him. If you have an Ito or Zhao and really like them as your main DPSs, I highly recommend Zhongli as he is one of the only sources of Anemo and Geo Shred at C0. That's basically it for Zhongli and his builds. He's really simple, you can run him low investment, high investment, phase damage, as a buffer, as a Geo damage, as a sub DPS, as a shielder, anything. And personally, this is the build I run on him. So Fav Lance with an R5 Fav Lance. I got this recently, so I don't really have it fully leveled. It's level 70, but it doesn't really matter because I don't use him for his burst. I only use him for his shield, and he has 30% crit rate, so he can somewhat reliably proc the Fav Lance passive. He has triple HP Millilith, so little crit rate here, and then HP. Don't look at the substats, that's kind of copium. I wish this showed a little bit more crit rate, but it didn't. But yeah, that's how I use him, and I use him only for his shield with Zhao. So yeah, I hope you guys found this video useful, and I wish you good luck on your pulls. And always remember to use your barometric transformer, because I forgot to use it 2 days ago, and now it's not synced with my weekly reset. So yeah, use that. Also stream on Twitch, so follow me there. Yeah, thanks, bye.